Like, comment, subscribe, share.
Okay, let's dive into this epic explainer detailing a classic tale of two childhood friends from Aleppo, Akil and Bakhtir. I want you to just imagine for a second being young, full of hope, and then suddenly losing absolutely everything you've ever known to a devastating plague. That profound, life-altering loss is exactly what drives our two friends to set out and try to make their fortunes entirely from scratch. It is a really fascinating fable about what actually happens when sudden, unearned wealth violently clashes with sharp intellect and earned wisdom. So let's get started.
Our story kicks off the departure. After the plague takes their parents and depletes every single last coin of their savings, Akil and Bakhtir are basically forced to leave their impoverished home behind. And you know, the emotional toll here is incredibly heavy, but their bond as friends is incredibly strong. They stop to rest at this beautiful, serene garden, and right there, they make a solemn pact. They agree that they will meet back at this exact spot in exactly 1 year. With a final embrace, they split their paths to seek their fortunes. Akil heads east and Bakhtir heads west.
Now, Bakhtiar's journey? It takes an absolutely wild turn almost immediately out of the gate. Utterly exhausted, he falls asleep under a tree deep in the forest. But when he wakes up, he looks down and finds that the simple, cheap brass key tied to his waist has miraculously turned into solid gold. He quickly puts two and two together and realizes that the dull rock he was sleeping on is none other than the Hajar-e-Kimya. This is a legendary alchemy stone that turns literally any metal it touches into pure gold. Talk about the ultimate lucky break. Just 4. That is all he has left. He takes his last 4 measly coins out of his pocket, rubs them on the stone, and just watches them instantly transform into shimmering, flawless gold. Armed with what is essentially an infinite, effortless wealth glitch, Bakhtir immediately heads straight to the bustling city of Baghdad. He goes out and buys massive iron bars, turns all of them to gold, cashes them in, and basically sets himself up to single-handedly ruin the local economy of Baghdad. Literally overnight, he starts living like an absolute king.
And this brings us to the price of sudden wealth, which brilliantly illustrates a timeless lesson that absolutely still applies today. Sudden, unearned wealth instantly attracts fake friends. Almost overnight, Bakhtir purchases a ridiculously lavish mansion and fills it with the most expensive, over-the-top furniture imaginable. Suddenly, he's surrounded day and night by sycophants who flatter his every single move. This blind wealth, combined with this complete lack of worldly experience, draws the incredibly naive Bakhtir right into the trap of a highly sought-after beautiful royal singer named Zara and her incredibly manipulative mother.
Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer manipulation. Zara and her mother figure out Bakhtiar's golden secret, and they hatch a ruthless, 3-step tactic to steal the stone. First, Zara fakes this deadly, agonizing headache, complete with dramatic thrashing around and foaming at the mouth. Step 2, her mother hysterically claims that only the legendary Hajar-e-Kimya can cure this fatal affliction. And Step 3, the wildly naive Bakhtir, trying to play the heroic savior, just hands over his priceless, irreplaceable magical stone to quote-unquote save her life. The very next day, the moment he asks for the stone back, their entire demeanor just flips. They betray him without even a second thought. They look at him in this mock confusion, sneer at him and say, "Have you ever even seen the Hajar-e-Kimya? Get out of our house." They totally deny the magical stone ever existed, they brand him a liar, and they literally toss him out onto the street, locking the doors to the very golden mansion that he created for them.
So the crucial point here is the stark contrast between our two friends. On one hand, you have Bakhtiar's massive fall. He is utterly stripped of his wealth, he's dressed in literal rags, and he's enslaved by Zara's guards, forced to wave bamboo sticks to scare birds away in her garden just to survive. But on the other hand, you have Akil's rise. Akil enters a completely new city with absolutely nothing to his name, but he uses deep respect, emotional intelligence, and sheer wit to gain the local sultan's favor, quickly climbing the political ladder to become one of his closest and most trusted advisors.
Moving into Section 2, Akil's rise through wisdom, specifically outsmarting the corrupt officials. In his prestigious new role, Akil notices that two very powerful men in the city, the police chief and the treasurer, are incredibly corrupt. Rather than fighting them directly, he initiates absolute psychological warfare. First, he subtly convinces the Sultan to just glare silently and angrily at these men during court, which completely terrifies them. Then Akil privately bluffs each official. For the police chief, whose crime was harassment, Akil fakes that the Sultan is planning 100 lashes in prison. For the treasurer, guilty of embezzlement, Akil warns of a fake surprise audit, and it's hilarious how fast they fold under pressure. In a sheer panic, both men pay Akil massive bribes just to save them from this imaginary punishment. But here's the kicker. Akil doesn't actually want their dirty money. Instead of keeping the extorted gold, his ultimate goal is securing unwavering loyalty by returning the gold right back to the guilty officials. He goes back to the Sultan, strategically praises the officials to clear their names, and then returns every single coin of the bribe money. This psychological masterclass completely terrifies them into permanent honesty and secures a powerful, untouchable political position for Akil.
Exactly 1 year passes. And I want you to think about that for a second. While Bakhtiar lost everything in a matter of days due to blind luck and naivety, Akil spent a full year patiently building a real life of immense value. Now highly respected and slated to marry the local wazir's daughter, Akil remembers his solemn promise. He takes a month's leave from the Sultan to reunite with his childhood friend at their agreed-upon garden.
On his way back, while resting at a quiet orchard late at night, he witnesses something utterly bizarre. I mean, picture this. A flying throne lands right in the middle of a pristine garden. 2 ethereal fairies spritz on some mysterious perfume and literally turn themselves into monkeys. And for what? Just to completely trash the local fruit trees. Then, using a second perfume, they turn right back into fairies as if nothing happened. It is totally absurd.
Akil watches intently from the bushes and figures out the mechanics of this wild magic. Perfume 1 instantly transforms the user into a destructive wild monkey. Perfume 2 reverses the spell, returning the user to their original human or fairy form. Seeing an amazing opportunity, Akil bravely steps out of hiding and bluffs the fairies, confidently claiming the King of Fairies sent him to arrest them for vandalism. Terrified by his fake authority, they just hand over these 2 powerful potions and flee into the night. Akil pockets them, knowing they just might be useful.
So that leads us to Section 3, the reunion, and a shocking discovery in the garden.
Akil finally arrives at the agreed-upon meeting spot after a year apart. He excitedly asks the locals about his friend, only to find out the devastating news that Bakhtiar has been completely ruined. He tracks him down to Zara's vast estate. As he approaches the ragged figure in the garden, he simply says, "I am your childhood companion and friend, Akil." He finds Bakhtiar emaciated, covered in dirt, and looking like a wild animal waving bamboo. After a deeply emotional, tearful reunion, Akil promises to use every ounce of his wit to win back absolutely everything his friend lost.
Okay, let's dive into this brilliant rescue operation. It literally plays out like a classic heist movie montage, where Akil decides to leverage Zara's massive ego and greed right against her. Step 1. He opens a flashy, high-end perfume shop right in the city center. Step 2. He deliberately refuses to visit Zara, building incredible mystique and forcing her to literally beg him to come to her mansion. And Step 3. He arrives posing as a wealthy, untouchable foreign merchant with priceless, exclusive wares.
So here he is, setting the ultimate trap inside her own golden mansion. He brings the magical fairy perfumes hidden delicately inside a stunning golden box. He makes a really big show of letting the women sample beautiful, regular perfumes, but deliberately keeps the fairy potions locked away. He knows full well that Zara's immense greed and absolute need for exclusivity means she won't be able to resist demanding to try whatever is hidden in that golden box.
And this is a brilliantly poetic illustration of the downfall of unbridled greed. On one side, you have Zara fiercely demanding to smell the exclusive perfume from the fairy realm, completely ignoring all of Akil's feigned warnings. And on the other side, the consequence is immediate. The absolute second she inhales that first perfume, she transforms into a violent monkey. She completely loses her mind, wildly attacks her own mother, and starts tearing apart her own golden living room.
The resolution here is swift and brutal. Amidst the chaos of a monkey literally destroying the house, Akil reveals his true identity and drops the entire act. He extorts the terrified mother, successfully getting the Hajj Rakumia stone back in exchange for the cure. Next, Bakhtiar is brought out in his rags and finally freed from captivity. Only after Akil secures the stone and ensures his friend's absolute safety does he administer the second perfume, turning Zehra back into a human, leaving her with a stark warning to never cross them again.
Which brings us to our final section. Wisdom overpowers blind luck, and the final lesson for Bakhtiar. With the magical stone finally recovered and Bakhtiar cleaned up, Bakhtiar gratefully offers the Hydrodechimia to Akil. But Akil completely refuses to keep the magical stone for himself, proving a massive point about the true nature of earned success. He imparts a vital piece of wisdom. If destiny is good, one should still use strategy.
He lectures his friend that pure reliance on magic or sudden luck without intellect, street smarts, and hard work will only ever lead back to disaster. Having resources is great, but knowing how to actually protect and grow them is what matters.
To prove the power of wit one last time, Akil uses a final, massive bluff to explain their sudden return. They go to the Sultan's court together, where Akil spins this grand, sweeping tale, claiming they are actually sons of a murdered wazir from their distant homeland. This brilliantly explains their noble bearing, and the narrative fully secures the Sultan's blessing, leading to marriages to the current wazir's 2 daughters and highly prestigious, secure positions for both of them.
It is a truly spectacular end to a really rich fable. So if you had to choose right now, would you rely on the sudden, uncontrollable magic of the Hajre Kamiya or the sharp, adaptable wit of Akil? Think about your own life, your goals, and what happens when sudden wealth meets extreme naivety. Who would you rather be? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you next time.